Remember that thing I said when I reviewed Real Rob, that Netflix is pretty much just a bunch of garbage? Like, they'll put like occasionally good stuff out there, but a good chunk of it is just absolute trash. Yeah, this is some of that absolute trash I was talking about.
Kevin, you're gonna be late for school. I'm practically out of the door.
Finish your homework? Of course I finished my homework.
You're late, Kevin.
I was helping Principal Taggart with a school safety issue.
One of these days, you're gonna get caught, you know.
Not today. What brings you to Columbus?
Video Game Expo.
I wrote a game. Hey, can I have that back?
Sure.
Ow! John! Hey, come back!
Universal Pictures presents.
We are here now with Larry Wolf, about to release highly anticipated game, Big Fat Liar.
That jerk stole my game!
An all-new movie.
He could have done this the easy way. Remember me? But now, we're gonna do things my way.
You bumped his phone?
Addresses, schedules.
Credit card numbers.
Uh-huh.
Moron!
Hey! You give up yet?
Why do they call it a ghost pepper? Are you okay? Why did I ever doubt you?
Bigger, Fatter Liar.
Movies like Cop and a Half 2 and Tooth Fairy 2, Jingle All the Way 2, like shit like that. It's like, why even bother making a sequel if you're not even remotely going to try and make it like the other one? You could have just made it its own movie. And yeah, they decided to do the same treatment to Big Fat Liar. A movie that, when this film came out, was 15 years ago. And even as shitty as movies from the Asylum are, at least you could chalk them up as, oh, they're just bad ripoffs. Add sequels like this, where they feel like they're not even in the same league as the first one, aside from occasionally name-dropping shit from the first one, that's like a whole other level of crap to me. When a scheming producer steals his idea for a new video game, Kevin Shepard and his best friend Becca declare game on and stop at nothing to set the record straight. In other words, it's the first movie, but 10 times shittier. You want to know what the plot to this one is? It's basically the first Big Fat Liar if you replaced movies with video games. And for some reason, the main character and the villain have the same last names as the characters from the first one, but they never give any kind of direct connection to them whatsoever. They don't explain if they're relatives or if this is like some other alternate universe shit going on. No, it's just like the laziest way of trying to connect it to the first one as possible. So just like in the first one, you have a kid whose last name is Shepard. He's played by some guy called Ricky Garcia, who this kind of went to the category that I thought they were going to go. It's like, okay, the main character in this movie, because this is a trend that I see a lot with like movies on Netflix and streaming sites. Usually they'll try to have the main character played by social media influencers or guys that are in bands that I've never heard of. And in this case, yeah, Ricky Garcia is the main guy in this. He's in some band. So yeah, this Ricky Garcia guy is playing a character whose last name is Shepard, just like Frankie Muniz's character from the first one. And just like Frankie Muniz's character at the beginning of the first one, he is a compulsive liar, he can't tell the truth, and you know, they basically do the same opening sequence where he gets up and he's like running around trying to get to school, and he's making up a bunch of reasons to his parents as to why he took so long to get up. He goes to school, and of course he doesn't have his paper ready for his class, so he has to come up with this big complicated lie that involves, you know, a fake phone call. When that scene was playing out, I was like, oh hey, it's like that scene in Home Alone 2. And that movie came out in the 90s.
Yes, sir, you'll need a major credit card upon check-in.
Credit card, you got it.
But eventually the lie gets revealed because his dad is called in and he's given one more chance, or else he'll be sent to some kind of summer school program as punishment. And so what he does is he has to do his social studies paper, which is oddly about technology for some reason. I want to know one of the lamest excuses to get the plot moving in this thing. Okay, so in the first movie, it wasn't a social studies paper, it was a writing assignment, and since Frankie Muniz's character, you know, was often told that he was a liar, he worked that into a story, and he wrote an entire story out, and then the story ended up in the hands of this sleazy producer guy, played by Paul Giamatti, and, you know, he takes the story, turns it into a Hollywood movie, and, you know, from there, Frankie Muniz wants justice. That's the whole plot of the first movie. Basically the same thing happens here, but just get a load of this shit. So despite them establishing that Ricky Garcia is like a fucking whiz kid when it comes to technology, he can apparently hack computers and he can apparently code video game programming. So he decides to write about technology by writing out what would be like code or something for a video game idea that he has. Instead of writing this on the computer and saving it in like Word doc or something and sending it through email to the teacher, they established that his dad took his computer away. What's even more contrived is how he ends up in the limousine with the villain of the movie, because his dad took the tires off his car because he didn't want him using the car for the week as like another part of his punishment. Instead of, I don't know, just taking his keys or something. Like, this is like Disney sitcom level shit, dude, I swear. So he ends up running into this limousine, which has this sleazy video game developer played by Barry Bostwick. Before this, his most embarrassing performance was being in Hannah Montana, the movie. And now, while that movie still sucks, yeah, I think this is 10 times worse. But yeah, instead of a movie producer, he's a sleazy game developer who's in town looking for people who'd be interested in helping him. And Ricky Garcia says that he'd be interested, and he just needs to hand in the paper first and get credit for it. But instead of what happened in the first one, where it's like, okay, Frankie Muniz accidentally left the paper, and Paul Giamatti was gonna hand it to him, but then he read it and liked it and took it for himself. Here what happens is, he shows him the code, and then they stop the limo, Barry Bostwick shoves him out of the limousine, and then just speeds off with his paper. And trust me, that's one of many times they want Barry Bostwick to be the obvious villain, because they just keep ramming home how fucking evil this guy is. He's like stereotypical evil businessman you see in like the shittiest Saturday morning cartoons ever. Oh, and by the way, Barry Bostwick's character's last name is Wolf, just like Paul Giamatti's character in the first movie. And, you know, say what you want about Paul Giamatti in the first one, yeah, he was definitely a bit over the top, especially near the end. But you know what? Paul Giamatti elevated that fucking movie. He was like one of the best characters in it just because it's Paul Giamatti. He can make like the shittiest movies just a little bit better based on his performance. But yeah, Barry Bostwick, he doesn't even really try in this movie. He's just kind of blowing through it. He's mugging like everyone else. Like I said, it's like watching a bad TV movie. Ricky Garcia tells them what happened. They think that it's just one of his lies. He gets sent to the summer program, again, just like in the first one. Which is really funny. This movie came out in 2017, and this summer program has like old big box computers from like the 90s. But then Ricky Garcia realizes that Barry Bostwick's company is in San Francisco, so they're going to go there and try and, you know, basically just the same thing from the first one. They're going to go there, talk to him, he turns them down because he's a stereotypical evil businessman, and then they decide, oh, it's, you know, it's game on, and they're going to, you know, basically pull a bunch of wacky shenanigans on him. But before they go to San Francisco, they have this whole scene where the not Amanda Bynes character for the movie, the main girl, she's talking to her hippie parents, and she makes up a lie saying she's going to like a yoga retreat. So that kind of substitutes for the whole like Amanda Bynes granny subplot. What's really interesting is to book a flight to San Francisco, Ricky Garcia takes his dad's credit card and uses it to book their flight. And that's not the last time that they take other people's money. And again, it makes you think like, so we're supposed to like these guys? For anyone that ever said that Ferris Bueller was an unlikable character for doing, you know, mean shit like that, fucking see this movie and see how you can have a character that's 10 times worse. So they get to San Francisco, they make up a lie to get past the secretary, just like in the first one.
I need to see you again.
Can you meet me right away?
When?
Now.
Right now?
I know it sounds crazy, but
I have to see you. I need to tell you how I feel.
Oh, Mike.
I think this could be the start of something very special.
Try to talk to Barry Bostwick, but he's a stereotypical asshole. And this, like I said earlier, they really want to hammer home that this guy is the villain, because he literally says every single evil businessman stereotype thing that you could possibly think of. You know, he says to all of his employees, you know, oh, I've been at this company for 30 years and I'm going to get the promotion and I'm just going to pay all of you in peanuts and all that kind of shit. And it's like, okay, I get it. He's the villain. We get it. Evil businessman. Like, you can make that interesting or entertaining in a movie if you tried, but they didn't try with this one.
I do not play video games. Video games are for losers with nothing better to do. I've worked for this company for 30 years. I deserve to be president. They owed it to me. But what did old man Highcroft do?
He gave the job to his grandson.
His idiot grandson!
I meant to say that.
I'm gonna work you morons like rented monkeys until I turn this turd of a department into a winner. And then I'm going to show them who should be president of this company.
So they swipe his phone, just like in the original, except it's even worse because they take his bank information which he for some reason keeps on his phone as a really contrived way for them to, book hotels and, buy clothes and have a fashion montage and all this kind of shit. And it's just like, again, we're supposed to like these guys? Every character in this movie seems like an asshole. It's like how Paul Giamatti had a female assistant who hated him. They do the same thing with Barry Bostwick, and they give her the name Pennywise. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, not even Penelope or Penny or anything like that. Pennywise. Did they really think that that was a cute reference or some shit? They also get help from a limo driver, except this time he's Russian, instead of being played by the black guy from Scrubs. And so he decides that he'll help them out because he wants to get back at Barry Bostwick. So yeah, they're slowly assembling this team of people that Barry Bostwick has screwed over. And ultimately they set up all the shenanigans that are gonna fuck with his day, on this big important business meeting. They end up getting his face painted and his hair dyed so that he looks like a clown. He has like white face paint with black lipstick and red hair dye. He ends up getting into car trouble. He ends up getting into a fight with some guy. He gets tasered by a cop.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna go. No.
All this culminates when Ricky Garcia finally sits Barry Bostwick down and says, tell my dad on the phone that it was my idea and that you stole it and that I was telling the truth. And then later on in the movie, he actually pulls the "truth is overrated" line from the original.
All you have to do is tell my dad the truth.
The truth. The truth. Highly overrated, kid.
This is what I'm talking about. This is one of those movies where it's like, it's not a sequel, it's like a shitty shot-for-shot remake of the first one, but minus any of the charm. I would make a joke about Disney right now, but as much as I hate the live-action Disney remakes, those at least have money put into them. This movie looks like it had all the budget of a sack of gumballs. So yeah, Barry Bostwick just completely blows them off, and he's gonna do his big presentation like an Apple thing. And this is all for an app game. That's the other thing. The first movie at least made sense, because it's like, okay, he wrote something for a creative writing class, and then it got taken away and turned into a shitty Hollywood movie. But here it's like, they made it a video game, because some really lame-ass dialogue at the beginning that explains that Ricky Garcia is a tech genius who's good with coding and computer hacking. So that was their attempt at trying to make this new by, it's not a movie this time, it's a video game. The video game footage itself, first of all, looks cheap. In fact, I kept convincing myself as the movie was going, I'm like, this is the shittiest tech company ever. Because if all the games that they have in the App Store look like the one for Bigger, Fatter, Liar in the movie, I'm more than convinced this company will go bankrupt because it looks like they have nothing but shit. But they got one more trick up their sleeve, so what they do is they pretty much have this big simulation thing going. And it's really lame, too. Like, a bunch of, fake monitors and stuff as he gets inside of a limousine. And they have, this big stereo system to try and make him convinced that he's, parked on railroad tracks and that the doors won't open. And there's only one way out, and that is if he tells the truth that he stole the game away from Ricky Garcia. And that was the other thing. I was like, dude, if this was real, this would be, some Jigsaw-level shit. This is something you'd see out of a Saw movie. And instead of the big awesome studio backlot chase scene at the end of the first movie, which had, doves flying everywhere and fucking helicopters flying all around and jumping off of buildings and shit, this time it's like they're just running through a bunch of hallways and then they end up on the stage of the big presentation room where he's supposed to unveil the game, and he admits that he stole it because he didn't realize there was a crowd there.
Really?
Get on there!
Oh.
This is all a big misunderstanding.
You have 15 minutes to clear out your desk.
It's a trick. It's just a big...
Jimmy?
It's a trick.
Gee, Wolf. Looks like nobody believes anything you say anymore.
I'm proud to introduce our new game. Big Fat Liar.
Dad, I'm so sorry for everything. I promise to never lie again.
We can talk about that later. But right now, I think they want you. Kevin, I'm so proud of you.
It really shouldn't be. And this movie finally ends with Barry Bostwick as like a mime on a street corner somewhere. And not since Nuki have I seen one of the most easy clips to use against the movie itself.
I'm in a glass box.
You suck.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I expected this to be bad. I heard bad things. I went into it knowing it was going to be bad. But oh my god, it somehow blew past all my expectations, and it was 10 times worse than I actually thought it was going to be. I mean, aside from the lead actors who are trying, all the acting in this movie is hammy and over the top, and nobody actually tries. The humor is bad. It's all just like a horribly, very under-budgeted rehash of the first one. And people can say what they want about the first one not being that great of a movie, because yeah, it really wasn't. I like it, and a lot of people like it. It's a nostalgic classic, but it's certainly not a great movie. There's a lot of goofy shit in that one. There's at least a charm to it that made it stick out, which this movie lacks. This movie just feels like somebody went digging through a drawer of movies that they had the rights to. They're like, all right, what do we have? Big Fat Liar. All right, Netflix, you want to dump this out? Okay, awesome. And we'll hopefully collect enough money to, I don't know, make something that might be good. I mean, if anything, this movie does feel like it's in league with a lot of the other bad sequels that we've reviewed for Blockbuster Show. It's in the same ballpark as shit like Daddy Day Camp and Tooth Fairy 2 and Cop and a Half 2 and like even George of the Jungle 2. But it's weird because it's like, okay, Daddy Daycamp was made like, I think a couple years after the first Daddy Daycare, so I can at least see why they try to capitalize on it for some reason. I mean, the first Daddy Daycare wasn't even that great, but it's like, okay, they try to capitalize by making a shitty sequel, but it was 10 times worse than the first Daddy Daycare was. And George of the Jungle 2, that was a shitty straight-to-video sequel made by Disney, because the first George of the Jungle made some coins, so that's why they did that. Then you get to movies like this. Then you get to the Cop and a Half 2 and Tooth Fairy 2, Jingle All the Way 2, even like the shitty Jim Carrey-less sequels without Jim Carrey. Like, after all that time, and it's not even the same people involved, why even bother considering it in the same canon as the first one? You know what though? Next time, we're looking at an even worse sequel than this. I mean, making a bad kids movie sequel, like the sequel to Big Fat Liar that nobody wanted, that is a walk in the park compared to what we're looking at next time. Because we're looking at a horror comedy sequel that tries way too hard to be out there and tries way too hard to be funny, and it's even worse than the first one, and that's saying something because the first one was shit. Next time, we're going to be looking at Thanksgiving 3. Until then, guys, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show. We'll see you guys in the next video. God, not fucking looking forward to that next time.
Anything interesting?
He's downloaded every episode of My Little Pony.
Even the Christmas special.
Which one? I mean, come on, movie. Have you even watched the show?